other two candidates.
Yes, sir.
And it's mismarked. It's mislabeled as District 14.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I will absolutely fix that.
Okay.
Thank you so much. It should be District 4.
District 12.
Oh, District 12. Oh my
We're
goodness.
12.
What am I? Oh, I'm looking at the wrong spreadsheet. You're right. You're right. District 12. Thank you so much for that correction. I apologize.
Sure, no, it's early for me anyway.
Absolutely. Well, I will get that fixed. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I apologize. All right, for everybody who is watching and online, this is candidate Robbie Bryant. He is on the Green Party ticket for District 12, and that is the Greenwood and McCormick areas. He will be running against Ann Parks and James Pearman in the November election for the House seat. So, Robbie Bryant, tell me a little bit about yourself and your platform.
Well, I'll try to keep the bit as little as I can. I was born in New Orleans, basically grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, went to all of my public education, grades 1 through 12. I did 10 and a half years in Greenville and 1.5 years here in Greenwood, 5th and 6th grade here in Greenwood. I did do a semester at the University of South Carolina, and then I moved to Atlanta to pursue my career as a professional musician, which ended up having me move to Los Angeles to continue to pursue that career. I ended up in San Diego, California for 25 years as a band leader. We did a lot of the corporate events. Different people would come in from out of town. San Diego's a big city for that. And we would entertain folks like that. And I started teaching as I got older and didn't want to travel quite as much. I started teaching piano and guitar, electric bass. I did that for 22 years in San Diego. So I have some teaching experience. It was private school. It wasn't public school. So it was different in several ways. I've worked in doing music for advertising. I've worked as a studio musician, and I've toured the country and several others. And I think my aunt was Katie Starnes. She owned the Starnes Club Forest out on the, is that 72 going toward the lake? And everybody seems to know my Aunt Kate. Kate Way is named for her right there in front of where the Starnes Club used to be. And that's where I began singing at the age of 10, as far as in public and actually getting paid. I think that sums it up. I wrote the Carolyn's commercial that some people remembered. The music plays all summer long at Carolyn's Palladium. And any more of that stuff you want to know, RobbieBryant.com, if I'm allowed to say that.
Yes,
my website has more stuff.
well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. So one of our first questions is, what is your opinion on the state of public education in South Carolina today?
Well, I don't know, other than what I've been researching for the campaign. One thing I've found out, we're rated 43rd in education in the United States. That is from Business Insider magazine. And I don't know how accurate that is. That was their rating. Which part of my issue is, why is that okay in South Carolina? Why is it okay to be in the bottom 40 or bottom 10 of the ratings of the states? In practically anything, we're in the 40s. Why is that okay? Why aren't we in the top 10? That would be okay to me, but it seems like it's okay here to be in the bottom 10 of everything. So education, 43rd. I don't have children in school here or even grandchildren, so I'm not sure what's going on now. Like I said before, I did all my public education here in South Carolina. And I think overall that education failed me in life. A lot of it was a bit terrifying. Some of the teachers would go to prison now for what they did to some of the students. It was kind of acceptable 50, 60 years ago, but I think it would result in a prison sentence now. So I don't have an incredibly high opinion of South Carolina's education just based on that. Now, I'm told by people that things are better, that there's more resources for things like labs. My wife and I graduated Greenville High. And back then, she points out to me that she became an engineer. She, at that time, could not take mechanical engineering or mechanical drawing, I think was the class at Greenville, because she was a girl. Girls weren't allowed. Now, I hope that's better. I'm going to guess that it is, just based on the climate that we're going through these days. But, you know, we encountered that. That's my experience. So I just hope it's a lot better than that. She tells me now, Greenville High, she went to a reunion, and that now they have a modern state-of-the-art with a 3D printer or something like that. Well, wow, and girls are in the class. So I hope there's improvements that way. But I'm concerned when I hear one of the other candidates, in practically every one of her answers to you, she used the word discipline. It was all about discipline. I didn't hear any ideas about bettering the education. I heard a lot of stuff about discipline. And I would suggest that if the schools are having that big a discipline problem, there's probably something else wrong. I don't think schools should be a place that discipline even becomes an issue. Schools should be interesting enough, and students should want to be there. Instead of, I remember not wanting to be there a lot, especially my years at Greenville High School. And in that way, you know, they told me I wanted to study music. My mother told me I was singing before I was 1 year old. Before I could talk, I was singing. I don't know what I was singing. I was probably making it up. But, and I pursued music from then on. I was told at Greenville High I was too smart to take music classes. I scored really high on my IQ test. And they said, oh, no, you're too smart. The music classes are for the slow kids. Which was astonishing to me as a 16-year-old, let alone now. I hope that's changed. I hope we're not still talking about stuff like that. I would like to see less emphasis on college prep and more emphasis on everything and anything that a child is interested in doing. People who are interested in doing something tend to do well in that something. And if that's going to college and being a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, that's great. But if your goal is to open up a beauty salon and you're required, this is another experience my wife had. She was tutoring in Greenville a few years ago and had a student who wanted to go to get her GED and open a beauty salon. This girl couldn't get her GED. I don't remember the numbers. I'm going to make this up, but to pass the GED, you had to score a 150. She kept getting a 149 and kept taking the GED over and over. And they found out her deficiency was her algebra. She couldn't get her GED because of her algebra, so she could go open a beauty salon. Now, I think there should be some kind of way to say, you know what, 149 is good. Here's your GED. Go have a beauty salon. I don't know why she needed to know any algebra. I took fairly advanced algebra that as a musician, a composer, and a teacher, I have never used to this day, but they wouldn't let me take music classes, so I had to take advanced trigonometry or whatever it was at the time. So, yeah, I would like to see more of that. Now, maybe that's happening. Again, I don't have kids or grandkids in the school system here, and I don't know a better way to have that awareness of what actually is going on. So I can just talk about my experience and what improvements I think could happen, and maybe they already have. Maybe you could disabuse me of my notions, but I think that would help. And I don't think discipline would be an issue as much in that kind of environment.
Well, thank you so much. One of the things that I'm happy to say is we definitely allow more girls.
That's why I thought so, but I wasn't sure.
We definitely allow more girls into those more scientific and what used to be more male-oriented courses. And quite honestly, as a science teacher who teaches chemistry and has 3 degrees, 2 of which are in chemistry, I'm happy to say that many of my science and engineering students that we have at my school are girls. Not all of them, but we do have a lot more girls coming into the fold, and that's very, very reassuring. And I'm so sorry that you had such a poor experience within the public education system here in South Carolina. And that number of being in the bottom 40 is something that we have sat at for a long time here in the state of South Carolina, and I would love for us to definitely change. One of the things that people don't get the full picture of when they see those numbers is they're comparing our state to everyone else, but without the same data. So our standards, our measurements for what students should be able to achieve are actually very, very high compared to a lot of our surrounding states. Our requirements to graduate, our requirements to pass a certain test are actually much higher than our surrounding states. And actually we're one of the not one of the highest, but close to being in, the highest in the country. And so, of course, when our standards are very high and the students can't quite measure to that standard, it does make us look bad when other states have a lower set of standards for their students. And so they obviously will look better than we do. And that's not for every state, but we are one of the hardest as far as standards and measures of achievement from our students, which it gives a false sense of us being in the bottom. And so it does look bad, and it's really, really sad that our students are not getting their due.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate the point of view. I would suggest, though, that goes to my point of the high standards. Maybe should not be applied across the board to everybody. Algebra should not be required of all students.
Well, I'm going to agree with you. I think we have, in education, one of the things that you'll see is it's very much like a pendulum. We swing one way for a few years, and then we swing back the other direction for another few years. And for so many years, we had in the United States this idea of if you want to go to a trade school, you go to a trade school. If you want to go to a college, 4-year college, you go to a college. If you want to go work in the factories and the mills, you can do that. And then the swing for the past probably 10 to 15 or maybe even 20 years has been, you all need to go to a 4-year college. You all need to go to a 4-year college. And what we're realizing is we've got all of these kids who were pushed to go to a 4-year college. And in my opinion, a lot of those kids didn't need to go to a 4-year college, and we weren't really pushing enough those trade schools that those children probably would have benefited more from as far as their interests and their job preferences. And so we need to definitely get back into some of that training and pushing students to do their interests, as you said.
And at an earlier age, I would make that part of the high school, the vocational training, and you could have apprenticeships, which is something I kind of did when I was a senior at Greenville. We had what was called distributive education, and you went and worked for somebody after school. That was part of the credit for the class. And but that could really be enhanced at an earlier age, maybe where 10th grade would start. You could go apprentice, or you could go to vocational. And yeah, it's the idea of the 4-year school for everybody is just wasteful, really. You got a bunch of students with degrees they can't use and debt they can't pay. So I don't see the value of that at all. But
yes, sir. So what would be your steps to improve public education if you are elected for this position?
well, thank you for that. I don't think there's a chance of me getting elected to this position, but what I would change, I would listen to you guys for one thing. I'm not sure that's happening. I'm not sure the elected officials are paying that much attention. They're just spouting rhetoric. I heard a lot of that, and I've had an unfair advantage here. I've heard the other two candidates. I've listened to the YouTube video. So, but I didn't hear any ideas. I didn't hear them asking you for any ideas. That'd be the first thing. I'd go to all the educators and teachers and say, well, talk to me. What do we need to think about? What do we need to do? And 'cause I'm not an expert in education. So I think that would help a lot right there. I'd learn and make decisions and be creative. And one thing I'm good at is being creative and coming up with ideas. And I'm not saying they're all good, but it's about, like, I was a songwriter as well in Los Angeles. They're not all good songs, but you write them anyway. And, you know, you write 10 and you get one really good one. Yeah, okay, great, that was worth it. So I'm not like that with ideas. I'm not sure every single one's going to be out of the park home run, but I would listen and I would think and I would try to do something, which means I'd get run out of town on a rail probably. But I don't know specifically. I would have to defer to everyone who knows more than I do.
Well, that would be a breath of fresh air, that's for sure. We would love to be able to have a seat at that table.
Well, that's my point. Everybody should have the seat at the table, and let's talk about ideas. Let's don't be red. Let's don't be blue. Let's don't go waving our flags. Everybody sit down and go, okay, what's the best idea?
Absolutely.
If it's a red idea, great. The blue idea, if it's green, if it's purple. I'm kind of into purple. So purple ideas. I don't know. There's not a chance that that's going to happen, at least not in my lifetime. But this is a start. Being able to talk about this and talk with you about it, it's a start. We'll start making some kind of progress.
Yes, sir. So how would you address funding in public education?
Okay, you're going to love this one, Mandy. I'm sorry I'm not on video because I had my hat. So I'm kind of known for having my hats. I was going to change hats for every question. I was going to put on my SpaceX, Elon Musk's rocket company hat for this answer. To raise money for education and reform, educational reform, and for transportation. I think that's something South Carolina still needs to address a lot, is the state of the transportation system. But to raise money for both of those, I propose the legalization and taxation of cannabis and hemp products across the board. Heavy emphasis on the word taxation. The states that have done this are raising buckets of money to pay for whatever they need to pay for. It's going to happen anyway. It's just a matter of whether we're going to be 43rd when it happens, and that's probably what it will be, if not 49th in the country. But I would say let's get ahead of the curve now before North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida, although I believe Florida is going to pass that this year in the November election. It's predicted to pass. So we'll lose a little bit of that. But if we could get ahead of the curve before the other states do it, all the better for our economy. Just the tax money alone would be substantial, and the money we would save by not tying up the courts and the law enforcement and all of that silliness that goes on. Now, again, give South Carolina some credit. I believe it's been decriminalized. So just from what I've seen watching live PD on, they come out of Columbia sometime. I think you'll get a ticket if they catch you with marijuana, which is, I think it's still silly, but it's not putting people in jail. But that would raise us a lot of money. That'd be a lot of money for the education system and a lot of money for the transportation system. 11 states have done it. 34 have legalized medical marijuana, but 11 have totally legalized, including California, which I've spent a lot of my adult life in California. California went from being the 6th largest economy in the world, legalized marijuana, and became the 5th largest economy in the world, surpassing Great Britain. Now, Great Britain's a pretty dang big economy. And California, after legalizing cannabis, passed Great Britain's economy. So they got like $600 billion in taxes in 1 year. That's California, it's a bigger state. But we could use a piece of that money here in South Carolina, and no one would be the worse for it.
Well, that is definitely a first for me in these interviews. So that's an interesting point for sure. So what would be your top issue surrounding education? Like, what do you think is the top issue for us?
Probably the idea we were talking about before about, when I was at Greenville High, now this was 50 years ago that I graduated, 49. You were looked down upon if you went to a vocational school. You were looked down upon if you took shop at Greenville High. You were snubbed. If you weren't a college prep student, it was a stigma. So again, I hope things are better than that now. But I think more emphasis on, nothing wrong with high standards, but it shouldn't be the same high standard across the board for all students. So to make the apprenticeship idea available, to make the vocational schools stronger, and whatever other variations of education could be, I would just like to rethink the whole idea. I'm not sure why we even do some of the things. Why are, grade schoolers taking tests and getting grades? I don't think I even understand the concept behind that. I certainly endured it, but that's what it was. It wasn't much fun. Now, I got to say, I did have some good teachers in South Carolina, but that was rare. That was unusual and a treat when it happened. Who would make the class, interesting? I had a science teacher at League Junior High who made it interesting. We all wanted to go to that class and just be there and take part. He was such a cool teacher. And I did real well in that class. I was a straight A student through 10th grade, or into the 11th grade. I had been a straight A student. That plunged halfway into my 11th grade over this kind of idea that I wasn't allowed to study or even think about what interested me. And I ended up doing pretty darn good with it anyway, no thanks to Greenville High. So, it shouldn't be that. School should be, and not a place where you need to talk about discipline with every answer to every question. That sounds like prison to me. That doesn't sound like school. Now, I know what I did was different. I was a private school teacher, but I didn't have discipline problems. My students wanted to play music and respected me because of my career. They all wanted to be there and were interested. And I never had a discipline problem with a single one of them that I can remember now. So I ponder it, maybe I'll come up with something. But overall, my students wanted to be there. Make the school the place where students want to be, not where they have to be.
That's a very good point there. I know one of the things I try to do as a teacher is I try to make what they're learning as relevant and as interesting as possible so that they want to come to my class. So you make a really good point with that. So considering how educators are still teaching and kids are still learning right now, despite the fact that we have gotten rid of the state testing for this year due to the pandemic, what are your thoughts on these types of accountability measures for the future?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
That's fine. So one of the things that we've always done in South Carolina, well, not always, but one of the things that we've begun to do in South Carolina is we are doing a lot of state testing for kids in 5K all the way up to their senior year. So they do a lot of state and federal testing year in and year out. And we were able to suspend those state tests for the most part during this pandemic. And without all of that testing, we noticed students were still able to learn, grow, and achieve, and teachers were still able to teach. So what are your thoughts about those forms of accountability measurements?
Well, again, I think it continues the train of thought we've had. As far as accountability, I guess in this respect, I'm a bit of a libertarian, but how about being accountable to yourself? How about making the students accountable to themselves? All this testing is not for the students. It's for, you did say a lot of this is federal. Doesn't this go back to the Bush administration?
Some of it, and some of it is federal and some of it is state. It just depends, but we do have both in the mix.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure what the value of that is to anybody other than people in government who want statistics to quote. And I don't think that's the right way to measure something like this. I think, like I said to start with, students should be accountable to themselves. And it's true anyway, no matter how many tests you give somebody, they're going to learn it if they want to. They're not going to learn it if they don't. And they can pass a test either way. I know I did. I passed all kinds of tests with an A that I could give a hoot about what the test was covering. I know probably not everyone's able to do that, but they shouldn't have to. Students should learn if they want to. They should be accountable to themselves. So if you want to be a failure in life and skip school and whatever else, I think that's your choice. And if you want to study and learn, that's your choice. If you want to be successful, that's your choice. And in that way, I'd like to see the government kind of back out of federal and state. If you've got to have accountability, maybe more on the county level or the city level, the school district level, but not on the state or federal level. I don't see what the value of it is anyway to students. It sounds like it's a real burden on the teachers. And it's an unfair judgment on the teachers, how well students do on a test. I don't think it means very much of anything. So I'd like to see it done away with as much as possible.
I know it would definitely save a lot of money if we could at least reduce the number of tests that we're given. I think we could save some of the money and spend it elsewhere, but that's my own personal opinion. And as a science teacher, one of the things that I always try to plug this in with as many candidates as possible is we have our state end of course exams at the high school level, and with South Carolina, unlike some of the other states in the U.S., South Carolina, they will send you the results as far as just a numeric grade and say, this child made an 80, this child made a 70, this child made a 50, but they don't tell you why the child made a 50, why the child made a 70 or an 80. And so the teachers can never really grow or become better as a teacher in that particular field, because we don't ever know why they made what they've made. And we can't grow in our own teaching instruction without that information. They just say, hey, this is what they made, 30% of your kids didn't pass, but they don't tell us why. So it would be nice if they could at least give us that information.
Well, that would be nice. And again, I think all of this could be rethought. Now, as a science teacher, what grade do you teach, Mandy?
I currently teach 10th, 11th, and 12th, which is chemistry, but the biology is where our science end of course exam is. We have one in biology, we have one in algebra, a new one coming in for algebra 2. We've got one in English 1, a new exam coming in for English 2, and then we have the U.S. history exam.
Right, I see. I can see the value in the sciences and the math, the STEM courses, of the testing. These are people who are probably all going to go on to college and to a professional career involving science, math, technical. I can see that testing being useful to the students and to the educational system. The others, I'm not so sure. I don't know if testing in English, testing in, what'd you say, U.S. history?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, who remembers any of that anyway?
Well, and one of the things that a lot of people also don't understand or see or hear about is the fact that those tests are given to not just the students who want to major in those things, but to all students, including our learning disabled students within certain groups, as well as our English as a second language students. So we have students who cannot read or write English very well, if at all, and they're taking these biology exams. And when you have populations that are rural and have a large number of those particular groups of individuals, and compare us to areas that do not have that as a population group, then of course the group is going to look bad on paper. If I've got, 20 to 30% of my population is ELL or an IEP type group, compared to another part of the state who might not have that same number of test taking students that have those particular handicaps or accommodations.
That's a great point. Like I said, I can see the testing for certain. If you're what would it be, a physics student, or you're looking at taking calculus in high school because your goal is to become a mechanical engineer and design bridges, you need to take that test for sure. If your goal is to open a beauty salon, maybe we could let you slide on the biology test and the other ones that you said, the science, the math, the algebra. Maybe we, give you a pass. You want to open a beauty salon, we'll put you in beauty salon school when you're 16, and by the time you're 18, you'll know how to do it. We'll give you some business training as well, and then let you go. And it's not for me or you or the students. It's for a bunch of politicians who are keeping statistics and can go, well, here's the percentage of illegal migrants who are flunking out of calculus. Okay. So I think just rethinking everything on a regular basis, a reality check to see how things are doing. And I don't see a lot of that happening.
Absolutely. You're right on the fact that we need to really revamp how we do things. And at this point, I don't feel like there's a whole lot of that going on either. But I'm hoping that these are some positive waves and some changes that are going to be made. And the fact that candidates like you are willing to sit down and have these discussions is certainly hopeful for us.
Well, it's a start. It's planting a seed that's going to take more candidates after me to pursue these ideas and other ideas. Just having ideas would be a good start. So it's a beginning. You know, the gay marriage thing took, how long did that take to come around? Well, you know, even when I first heard about it as a concept, I was going, you know, what's wrong with a civil union? Why do they need to get married, you know? I've certainly come all the way around from that, as has the rest of the country for the most part. And it's kind of the same thing, the legalizing cannabis idea, the idea of maybe not making certain students take the algebra exam. It's all starting. And the more we talk about it, get those ideas out there, and it'll come around. It'll just take a little while.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Bryant, for meeting with me today and giving us your thoughts on education. Is there anything you would like to say in closing?
Well, there was, and now I'm not sure I remember what it was. Just, you know, I'm living in South Carolina now. I kind of grew up here, and I'm back here, retired, growing my garden and my plants, my greenhouse. But I would like to think that South Carolina can be in the top 10 rather than the bottom 10 in different areas. It's a beautiful place to live. We could attract, if we want growth, there's all kinds of ways to attract it without destroying the state. Lessons to be learned from California. So that's my closing idea. Let's go for the top 10.
Well, thank you so much. And we definitely have the people in this state to take us there, because we've got some wonderful, wonderful people. We've got beautiful places and smiling faces.
There you go. I like it.
Well,
thank you, Mandy.
Thank you so much. And I wish you the best of luck in the November election. And I hope you have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend.
All right. Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.